Welcome to the WriterDojo with your host, Steve Diamond and Larry Correia. Guys, hello? Oh, deadlines. Today's episode, the best of the WriterDojo. Yeah. Season 1, Episode 12, Dialogue.
If you're going to use patois and messed up words in English, do so sparingly, just enough to indicate how that person talks. Don't go overboard. It'd be like having the narrator, your audiobook, doing an accent that none of the characters could none of the listeners could understand. It would be horrible. But that's what people do all the time because they think they need to do that. Like, for whatever, because dwarves always speak Scottish.
Apparently.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
And Romans all have English accents. That's how it works. But don't be very careful with patois, guys.
One of the things that I see quite frequently is, and you alluded to this earlier, it's really hard for a lot of readers to accurately depict who the character is just through speaking. Now, when Larry and I, an interesting little thing here that happened fairly recently. Larry and I were kind of listening to the edited versions of a few of our first episodes, just to see how we were liking it, and for me to see how much I hated the sound of my own voice. And the funny thing is, when I got to Larry, I was listening to Larry and I'm like, oh yeah, that's Larry. Yep, he talks like this. Yep, he has those. And I could picture mannerisms when you were speaking because we've known each other for a long time. And then it got to me and I was like, I don't know who the frick this guy is. This is weird. But so often it's hard for authors to, and look, every author is guilty of this to some degree because it's hard. And that's really giving unique voices to many, many characters. And I think this is why a lot of authors, myself included, and I love telling stories in first person, it gives me a little shortcut. I don't have to worry so much about the other people's voices all the time. I've got one primary voice.
Yeah.
But when you get into that third person narrative, you have so many characters to take care of. You have dialogue going back and forth. And like you said earlier, the fewer dialogue tags I have, the better.
Yeah, there's some tricks around that. Think about the character's personality. I like to put myself in their shoes when I'm writing them, and I think, how is this person going to present this? And a big part of it is sense of humor. Everybody's got a different sense of humor or lack thereof. So that's a huge part. If you establish how your characters laugh and what they think is funny, and you can get that in there, it's very indicative of who's talking. Anger. Some people are angrier than others. Some people are more determined than others. Some people are more religious than others. People have these different traits, but if you can accentuate those traits through their dialogue, it becomes clear who's speaking. Then there's the nuts and bolts tricks to avoid the saids. When I get done with a book, one of the first things I do a word search for is profanity. The other one is said.
Yeah.
And to give you an idea, my first novel, actually I did pretty good on this, but my first novel, I had like 500 saids in it. And then my most recent novel, I had like 100. Why? Because once again, going back to listening to audiobooks, all the unnecessary he said, she said, Bill said, Bob said, it is kind of grating to the ear. And it's unnecessary when you're listening to the audio.
Season 1, Episode 17, Grand Theft Storytelling.
Look, while every story basically has been told, okay, that I don't think there's really any arguing that. To its core fundamentals, everything's been done.
Every now and then there is a truly original story, and it's usually weird as crap.
Oh yeah. But so all of that has been done. However, what hasn't been done is your own voice, because it turns out that everyone has diversity of thought, to use the D word. Everyone thinks a little different. Everyone's voice is a little different.
And so the key is don't copy people. When we were joking about ripping people off, don't plagiarize. That's evil. Okay, that's like the worst thing ever.
Please don't do that.
So when we're talking about ideas, we're talking about that kind of thing. And for example, if you see a character that's a super awesome character, there's nothing wrong with taking that fundamental like character sketch and putting them in an entirely different setting. Yeah, and so you can draw inspiration from characters. That is perfectly fine, especially when you mix and match things from different things and you put them together and they clash in interesting ways. It's a little dirty secret of Hollywood that when they're pitching stuff, it's almost always their elevator pitches. This franchise meets this franchise. Like Monster Hunter X-Files meets the Expendables.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's always you take a thing that people can kind of relate to, and you take another thing they can kind of relate to, and you plug them together, and there you go. I would say if it's really blatantly obvious what you've done, then you have not personalized it enough. It is if it's still obviously, if it reads like mix match, mismatch fan fiction where you like collide two worlds together, and it still is obvious what everything is, then you haven't done enough work. I saw somebody the other day said, well, you know, MHI is basically just the same story as Harry Potter. And I was like, what?
Oh, is this the one where they said it's just Harry Potter with guns?
It's Harry Potter with guns. I was like, how? And they're like,
Owen does have a scar.
They go, well, the main character has a scar and they fight the forces of evil and they both have friends. The main character has friends. I'm like,
dang, I didn't know that we weren't allowed to write about friends anymore.
Okay. I was like, well, sir, I mean, they're also mammals.
Yes. Yes. And quote unquote, things happen.
Oh, yes. There's monsters. Oh, and somebody's like, well, one has a werewolf boss. The other has a werewolf teacher. I was like, oh man. Yeah, okay. It's basically the same novel.
Yeah.
Except for, you can imagine Harry Potter with a 300-pound pit fighter, freaking killing machine as Harry Potter.
Or just imagine Harry Potter with a freaking AR-15.
I was imagining Harry Potter. If Harry Potter starred Owen Pitt, that book would be done in the first book, and he would have just like snapped Voldemort's neck.
Yeah.
Season 2, Episode 12, How to Tell a Story in 5,000 Words.
Like a story in 5,000 words, or less, or whatever, you know, tell a short story. Understand that there's actually some logic and some business decisions when you're doing this.
Yep. And the more experience you get, the more you can actually engineer the story to fit a specific window.
What are some of the first things that he should be thinking of? Say he sees a query. We're taking, we want fantasy stories that are dark and gritty, and it can't be more than 5,000 words. Go. Yeah.
Okay.
So what say that pitch comes to you. Say I'm the editor. I'm like, hey, Larry, I need fantasy stories, no more than 5,000 words, dark and gritty.
That's pretty much how this works.
That's
a lot of
happens.
times too. The theme is something like that. So yeah. So if I'm thinking dark and gritty fantasy story, usually I'll take a walk. I'll take an hour and I'll just kind of ponder on it. And I'll be like, do I have anything when we've talked about idea management before?
Yeah.
In my folder of ideas, in my idea garden, do I have any things that are images or cool ideas or thoughts or lines or characters sitting out there that fit this gritty, dark fantasy thing?
My idea garden's a cemetery.
Yeah. Steve has the idea cemetery.
Yes.
Actually, that sounds bad. It's like the ideas go to die, but then you have the ghosts.
Yes.
You're a horror
bring
writer.
them all
I don't know
back.
how you do it. Mine's like an idea armory.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
But I'll go through and I'll think, okay, do I have anything already that is something I want to write? And then I kind of brainstorm.
Yeah.
And if I don't have anything in the idea garden that fits about that, I mean, oftentimes, like I said, the more you do this, the more practice you get coming up with ideas, the easier it is because you've trained your brain. I'll go wander around for an hour or two and I'll go for a drive. And I'll just think about it and I'll be like, oh, wow, actually, this would be kind of cool to play with this kind of thing. And then I'm going to fit it to that theme. I'm going to make sure that anytime you're writing for somebody's anthology, you always want to kind of aim to really, hit it. I'm going to write that story. And my thing is, when I'm looking at the 5,000 words, I don't really, I'm an outliner, but I don't really outline 5,000 word stories. It's not worth it. 5,000 word story I can write in a day or two. Usually. If I spend 3 days on it, I've probably spent too much time.
Sure.
If I've spent 4 days on it, I've definitely spent too much time. But I want to get in fast. I want to make sure I hit those themes. I don't need to resolve everything, but I need to resolve something. Sure. Even if it's just a character realization or the character changes somehow or grows somehow.
But for me, that's one of my first things. It's, okay, what kind of cool characters can I have? How can I get into this action really quick? How can I make sure that it feels like a me story?
Yeah.
Do you care about them or their predicament within a paragraph? If you do, you're on that track.
Yeah, and the thing is, you don't necessarily have to solve the entire predicament.
No.
You just need to have, in this short story, you need to have some sort of progression. Something needs to happen, something needs to change, something needs to grow or die.
That's usually me.
I mean, actually, you'd be surprised, 5,000 words, you can actually tell a lot of story.
But to Larry's point, you're starting in the middle of something, in the middle of the action. All that other stuff, it is important in some way, shape, or form, but not this story.
Well, it's interesting because there's like, the term is in media res.
Yeah.
Is when the story just kind of begins and stuff's happening, and then you figure out what's going on from that point on. That is not necessarily necessary in a 5,000 word story, but it does actually help, because if you are tempted to have like 1,000 words worth of introduction, that's taking up space. The biggest key is what's pertinent.
Yeah.
And so what has to be there and what is extraneous. And so I like the idea of come in when the action's already started. Yeah. So you're not spending a lot of time before because you don't have room for that. And then get out early. The key is on a lot of these is you guys don't have to actually explain the entire thing. People get trapped and they think a short story needs to tell the entire story. But a lot of times a short story is basically you're telling part of a story.
It's just a scene sometimes.
A lot of times it's just a scene.
Season 2, Episode 13, Character Growth and Development.
The beginning of any story should show the character as the complete opposite of who they change into by the end of the story, and show why that character can't/won't change as their current selves. The first time they are forced to change is the catalyst, which starts their journey.
Oh, good grief.
So why is that horrible advice, Steve?
Because the idea that your character has zero consistency throughout the life of their journey through their plot arc is absurd to me.
You think about it, if you think about like every successful story there are a handful where a character does a 180, where a character is totally different. But what percentage of stories would you say that is?
No, it's pretty small.
If this woman is giving advice like this should be like every story.
Right.
If every story has the same character arc, what is the point?
Exactly.
This is like the kind of story she likes, and she's like insisting that everybody needs to open their stories that way. That's just foolishness.
Yeah. And the other thing that I see in this is I'm wondering if she's thinking of the typical like villain redemption plot arcs. The way this nameless miscreant on Twitter is explaining it is that it's like a heel turn, like out of nowhere, like they're supposed to all of a sudden become a different character. And that's absurd to me.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's more that you can have a character flip some things. You can have a character, repent of their evil ways, or you can have a character go from good guy to bad guy.
Or bad to good.
Or
whatever.
bad to good. But they're still kind of going to be on an arc.
Yeah.
No, usually where this works, guys, and the key on this in characters, if you want to have a character change dramatically a direction, think about the clues you put in that character to begin with, and then exploit those flaws or accentuate those strengths.
And what I really like doing, Larry, is I like taking characters and their specific characteristics and showing how a very specific characteristic and showing how it can be used in other instances for good showing how other people perceive it, but also showing how it can be used against him.
Yeah, that's an interesting one too, is because when you set up the character at the beginning, you as the writer, you know where you're going to take them, kind of. You know what direction you're taking this character in. You can do any sort of flip you want, but you got to build those keys in there. And so if we were to follow this advice, it would just destroy the story, because we would take him from all these good things and make him an interesting character, and we'd throw him away, basically. And the whole catalyst thing, whatever. Don't ever write according to a checklist, people. That's the main key. If you want to have your character flip and become super evil psycho killer, or you want to have your evil psycho killer become a good guy, you can do that, but you got to do it organic. You got to do it smooth.
Yeah.
It's kind of sleight of hand here.
Well, it's just like anything else. I mean, if you're not foreshadowing what's going to happen to a character, just like what's going to happen in a plot and things like that. I mean, think of any heist movie ever made. There's almost always that moment at the end where the person who gets taken advantage of in that situation, they do the rapid fire reminiscence over like all the different things, all the clues that all of a sudden make sense in that guy's head. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, all of this was foreshadowed.
Thanks for mansplaining and telling a random woman on the internet to shut up because you think she's stupid. I hope I'm smart enough to understand that anyone can write and sell books, even an incel like you.
Oh, gosh.
Thumbs up emoji.
Thumbs up. Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah, so not to be too cruel here, but here's the thing, guys. The reason I brought out this second part is there is good advice and bad advice out there, and there's constructive criticism and destructive criticism.
Correct.
And you guys, listen to constructive criticism, but you guys don't have to listen to bullcrap constructive. You guys don't have to listen to crappy criticism from people who don't know what they're talking about. But the funny thing that made me laugh about this is, so a guy who is actually a USA Today bestseller, an international bestseller, says, hey, that's bad advice. You should probably not give bad advice. You should probably listen more. And the response immediately is, thanks for mansplaining. Well, first off, is she a biologist? How would she know? Okay, so there's that right there. Okay. And he didn't tell her, it wasn't, I would have used more profanity if I had responded, but then, obviously, anyone can write books, even an incel like you, which is funny because, obviously, if you don't like bad writing advice, you have never known the touch of a woman.
I think the deeper issue here is one of how you respond to criticism when it's leveled at you. And look, every single person out there, when you're a writer, you're going to receive criticism. Sometimes it's going to be from the editors who are giving you advice on how to improve your craft. Sometimes it's going to be from readers and reviewers who, maybe they do or do not like your story.
Sometimes, it's feedback from fans. They might be right. They might be wrong. Sometimes it's feedback from detractors who just want to tear you down.
Yes.
I'll take constructive criticism, but I won't take bullcrap criticism.
That's right.
And I actually didn't say bullcrap, but
well, yeah,
we're on the air. But no. So the thing is, so be aware, guys. When you take criticism off people, some people are just full of crap and they just want to whine about stuff on the internet. Other times, you might actually be wrong. You might be barking up the wrong tree here.
Well, and I think the biggest thing here, which is obviously what this the person who wrote these series of tweets is incapable of doing, apparently, and that's showing a little bit of self-reflection. And I think one of the biggest strengths that new writers can cultivate, and maybe some old writers can, teach, old dog new tricks and all that crap, is to have that introspection. It's a talent that can be learned.
Yeah, and here's the thing, guys, you got to have kind of rhino hide in this business.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to find the fine line. Too many writers, we get really hung up on our own heads. It's because, it's the nature of being a writer. You're a creative type person. A lot of us get really, really sensitive. But what you need to do is kind of take this stuff as it comes, be analytical. Sometimes they might have a valid point. Other times they might be full of it. But you need to just kind of look and don't break down and be like, oh, no, someone criticized me. It's the end of the world. You're going to get criticized.
Oh, there's no...
people are not going to like your stuff.
There are no exceptions to this rule.
No, the greatest writers who have ever lived have had 1-star reviews.
Oh, yeah.
Like, tons of them. and probably, some of the greatest writers who've ever lived. We have never seen their stuff because they broke down in tears and never wrote anything again after the first time someone yelled at them.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Listening to this podcast. You like Dexter? Yeah. How about Patrick Bateman? American Psycho? Yeah, you like him too, huh? Well, guess what? I am the female version of both of them together, and then maybe mix in a little bit of Hannibal Lecter. Check out my series, the 13 Reasons for Murder series, at shop.amandabird.net.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Writer Dojo. We are back.
Season 2, Episode 16, Sharpen Your Saw.
Why aren't you writing? Where's the next book? And it's like, oh my gosh, you piece of crap. What kind of insensitive scumbag are you that this writer is talking about his ultra-sensitive battle with depression and potential suicide? This other dude is like, wow, I'm really heartwarmed that I was able to, help you through this time. And what does he get? You should be writing. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with your brain, you friggin' psychopath? So I went off, being me, not there, because, I didn't want to get involved in this, but I went off on this. And I've seen it with other writers. There's another writer I know who, also, good dude, but he's a sensitive guy. He's the opposite of me. I am the anti-sensitive.
Wait, you're not sensitive?
Well, I mean,
Weird.
I'm sensitive to
so shocked.
Hot food. Well, actually, no, not even that.
Not really.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much I just rhino my way through life. But no, there's this other writer who's a sensitive guy, and he struggles with depression. He struggles with all sorts of stuff. And the same thing. I was watching on there, and he quit going on the internet. He just basically quit interacting with his fans because he couldn't. Because he would go and interact with the fans, and the fans would just yell at him, basically.
Yeah, that's not healthy.
And they think there's I do it from a place of love. No, you're actually being kind of an abusive douchebag.
Yeah. I mean, that's that's the abusive husband that hits his wife and then says, I only do this because I love you.
Well, and I've seen where people get defensive when you point this out, and it's the abusive husband thing. And they're like, well...
Or wife, I don't judge.
Well, no, and then I'm not a biologist. And then... people will know when we recorded this episode. But then you see the thing where they get all defensive, and it's like, well, it's only because I like your books, or they'll be like, well, first world problems. You're a successful writer. Ooh, poor you. It must be so hard.
Right, because success all of a sudden means that you don't have any other problems in the world entirely.
No, so guys, this stuff, and so really the way this episode is kind of one part for the fans, one part for the writers.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about both here, but as writers, guys, you need to sharpen the saw.
Yeah.
To borrow the Stephen Covey thing.
Yeah, that's right.
You need to do this stuff other than work.
One of the things that we always talk about when it comes to human resource stuff is that there's a reason why employees are given PTO to use. And that's not just so that they can get out of our hair for 2 to 4 weeks a year. No. When people take time off and recharge, they actually come back as a more productive worker. The same thing happens in writing. We spend so long in front of the computer just clacking away and trying to get crap done, right? But there comes a point when you just have to step away to recharge and recenter. If you don't do that, your productivity dips. Now, and the same thing, there's a similar argument to be made for working, well, regardless of what job you're doing, for long stretches of time in a row.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a reason why, Department of Labor is like, okay, if you're a salaried employee and you're working X number of hours, you get certain types of breaks and some are paid and yada, 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 right? So there's a reason why we have to do breaks. There's a reason why we have to take time off. There's a reason why, if a person works more than 8 hours in a day, their productivity drops dramatically from 1 hour to the next as time goes on.
Yep.
The same thing holds true in writing, Larry, because what's one of the very, very, very first things we said when we started this show? And that's that this is a job. If you want it to be a job, you got to treat it like a job.
Yep. I mentioned Sharpen the saw, but in case people don't understand what that means.
Explain that, Larry.
That comes from the old Stephen R. Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which everybody who was a business major about me and Steve's age had to read.
Yeah.
But one of them was really good because he talked about basically if you take a saw and you just saw wood with it, eventually the saw is going to get dull, and then it's going to take more and more and more effort, ever increasing effort with the ever duller saw to cut through the same amount of wood. Mm-hmm. If you have a sharp saw, you can cut through a lot of wood. And so you have to stop, take the saw out, and sharpen it.
Yep.
You are the saw, and the work is the wood. And so you have to take a break. Now, everybody's a little different. And so some of you're going to work in big stretches. Some of you are going to work at night. Some of you are going to work in the morning. Whatever it may be, you're going to find whatever it is your creative energy is. Everybody's different on how they work. I don't get anything done hardly at all before lunch because I do intermittent fasting. And so I can't really write in the morning. But then lunchtime I eat. And then from basically the rest of the day, I'm great. I can work like crazy. So you got to figure out what works for you, and you got to recharge that brain. You got to disconnect.
Everyone has their own things that they like. Back in the olden days, Larry, when you were starting out and we were really getting into the role playing game group stuff together.
Oh yeah.
It was I believe the posts were called My Geeky Hobbies.
Oh,
isn't that what we called it in the beginning?
Yeah, I still do those occasionally.
I saw one fairly recently.
The main reason I don't, honestly, is WordPress photo hosting kind of sucks.
Yeah. But I remember you do. Every now and then, Larry, you'll post some minis that you paint.
Yeah, for those of you guys who don't know, I paint.
That relaxes your brain.
Yeah, I paint miniatures.
The other day, I don't paint miniatures or anything. I'm not good at that yet. But what I have been doing, because I do have, besides the barbecuing thing, I do that all the time. And in fact, barbecuing, literally smoking meat and stuff, that's what got me through my previous job that was complete and utter garbage for the last 6 months of it. But these days, one of the things that I love almost unconditionally is Gundam. I love me giant robots. Yeah. I love Gundam. I love that stuff. I just absolutely love it. And so I've been buying the Gunpla models, and that's what I build on the side when I'm bored. But I do that because I don't have to think about anything. I just sit down, I just put these pieces together, and then I see this thing being created in front of me. And at the end of the day, I have a really wicked, cool looking robot.
Season 2, Episode 17, from the episode Business and Marketing. Taxes.
They've started receiving money for some short story sales. They went and had their taxes done at H&R Block. So what the person told either Brennan or Aaron was that they might be in some hot water with the IRS for not registering themselves as a business while submitting these stories for publication. And there's an implied threat in here from the tax guy on behalf of the IRS, basically saying like, well, you have to register as a business right now or you're going to be screwed. And
no,
that's bullcrap.
Yeah, no,
that's bullcrap. So Brennan and Aaron, don't listen to that dude. He's a terrible accountant. Go somewhere else. I don't know. I don't know if they're local. Are they local to us?
No,
they're not local to us.
Somewhere in the West.
Okay.
Wyoming or Montana.
If you guys were super local to us, we could have recommended you actually a really good place.
Yeah, if you're in Utah, we have a CPA firm we recommend to all the writer friends we know.
Exactly.
Actually, we both use the same one, right? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, there you go.
So here's the trouble. People that work at H&R Block in places like that, they're not really any better than me or you just doing our taxes on TurboTax at home. They're not any better than that.
Well, because what this comes down to is what the IRS actually cares about is are you paying taxes on your income?
That's right.
And so if you have sold a short story, if you sold a couple short stories, you've made a few $100, you're not going to go incorporate yet.
Right.
But here's the thing, just put that on your taxes. Just
report it.
Just report it. Report the income, pay the taxes.
Especially when it's a small amount. You got to understand the way the tax code in the U.S. works. When it's very small amounts of money, there's almost no tax on it. The way the tax code scales, The more money you make, the more taxes you pay. Okay. And so when you make almost nothing on it, it doesn't really move the needle one way or the other.
Season 2, Episode 21, Pitching and Acquisitions with Dave Butler.
Now, how do you write a pitch? So I'm talking here about a letter you would send to an editor or to an agent.
Okay.
Okay, here's what I recommend. Especially when you're starting this out, you're going to write a 3-paragraph letter. Paragraph 1 says, my book is awesome. Paragraph 2 says, my book is even more awesome. Paragraph 3 says, here is the business. Let's start with paragraph 3. Paragraph 3 is what you want. It'll say something like this. I am seeking representation for Forbidden Pleasures, a science fiction novel complete at 120,000 words. It is a standalone book that I could write further adventures with the same characters in the same universe if desired. Maybe, relevant qualifications there. Why do I say maybe? Because people overestimate how valuable their qualifications are. Do not say if you are a teacher. Do not say if you have a university degree. It does not matter, okay? If the book is about zombies based on a real-life neurological condition and your dissertation for your PhD was studying the real-life neurological condition that can cause zombieism, put that.
So if you're Rob Hampson.
I was going to say, so if you're Rob Hampson.
If you're Rob Hampson, say, I am Rob Hampson, okay? Or I mean, maybe if you have won some really recognized prizes. If you won something like Writers of the Future, I might put that there. I would not put I have twice been a quarterly semifinalist honor. I just wouldn't. Because when you put something there and it does not look like a real qualification, you just look smaller, not bigger. Right.
Okay.
So err on the side of putting none. Okay. So you just describe, what do I want? I am seeking representation, or I am seeking a publisher for. Here's the genre. By the way, you want to put a simple genre. You don't say, it is a rom-zom-com sci-fi fantasy cyberpunk novel, because they just think, well, you're an idiot. You're an idiot, okay? Right. The question is, where does it go in the bookstore?
Be a very long.
Right. So go into Barnes and Noble.
Very long label.
Yeah, and be like, okay, the answer appears to be science fiction. A science fiction novel. The ideal pitch, right? You're inviting the editor or the agent to make an investment in you. You're not offering to be their employee. You're asking if you can be a joint venture partner with them.
Okay.
That's going to mean an investment of time and money on their part. Okay. So you want them to A, have confidence and be excited about your offering, but also B, to think the investment will be small and easy. And so, and can be easily terminated if it's not working. So your ideal pitch is, hey, this is a standalone novel. It could be expanded into more. So that's paragraph 3. What's paragraph 1? Paragraph 1, here's what I recommend for paragraph 1. I would start with a Mad Lib. I would write out a Mad Lib to get all the information you need, and then I would rewrite it to sound as exciting as possible. Okay? Here's the Mad Lib. This is a story about person, a very brief description, who, more than anything else in the world, wants to do this thing, but cannot because whatever is stopping her. She sets out to plan A. If she fails, terrible consequences. If you know all that stuff, you know enough to write a great paragraph 1. Paragraph 1 should be focused on your character. Okay, it's characters who tell the story. So again, this is a bad place to put your world building. That's paragraph 1. And I'm not saying it needs to be short, but you can't just, don't keep jamming things in to try and stick to a 3-paragraph format. This is not high school, okay? Reasonably concise. What is my basic story, the basic goal, the consequences, who is this character, and give me some reason to care about her.
I was going to say, how quickly can you make the person reading your pitch care and think it's interesting?
Right. There are stakes, there's a problem, there's a reason to like this person.
Okay.
Right? That's paragraph 1. Paragraph 2, you want to make the reader more excited about the story, and what you put in there depends on the kind of book it is.
Okay.
Maybe you do talk about your world here. This is a new secondary world based on, inspired by East Asian sources where this and this and this, right? Or maybe you've got an ensemble cast, and so paragraph 1 is about your Frodo, and then paragraph 2 is going to be about Aragorn. Or maybe there's a really important subplot, and so paragraph 1 is about the subplot and the stakes. Paragraph 2 is like, but he wasn't expecting to fall in love. Mm-hmm. If it's a romance, your paragraph 1 might be the romance subplot, and your paragraph 2 might be the ostensible main plot. That's it. Three paragraphs. There's other stuff to talk about, where to get a list of agents, keeping track of them, etiquette for emailing them, or where to get editors. But basically, that's your guide to constructing a winning pitch.
Season 2, Episode 24, The Rhythm of Writing, with Craig Nybo.
And music overlaps with fiction in some form. And maybe if I can explain it in a way that is helpful to musicians, but also helpful to non-musicians, what I would say is okay, so first of all, when we write, particularly, it's a term used in screenplay writing, but you can also use it in novel writing or short story writing. We talk about a beat sheet all the time. Beat is a musical term. So already right there, you're talking about a beat. You're talking about a rhythm in your writing. And your writing does need to have a rhythm. And how rhythms work is they're divided into little chunks of time that we refer to as measures. And we take a series of those measures and put them together, and we get a beat. So that beat can be something like so there we have like a 2-bar beat, or that was 4 bars, okay? So there we have a 4-bar beat, but we took the entire 4 bars to express that entire beat. So a 1-bar beat is like but then I add in so I extend that loop out, and I make something that's more like that resembles more of a sequence in a story. So as you're writing, don't think about just the beat, but think about where your beat is going. What sequence is that going? What sequence are you going for? And how are you going to resolve that? That sequence kind of becomes a wave that sort of builds up, crests, and goes back down, builds back up, crests, and comes back down. We further deconstruct it, and if you're talking about song production, there are different parts of the composition. We have the beat. That's the drums exclusively. And then as we tack layers onto the beat, we get what we call the rhythm section. So the rhythm section is 2 instruments playing at the same time, or sometimes 3. So you have the beat, which is the drums, and you have the bass, and those guys together are the rhythm section. So now we have 2 layers. You can look at your story the same way. You have multiple layers inside your story. You have your beat that's giving you what you're pulling from your beat sheet. And then over that, you have your second layer, and those 2 together are playing. So you got and you have a bass player, he's all boom, right? So you're putting those things together, you have a rhythm section. Now on top of that, because that's all totally rhythmic with a little bit of melody, we're going to put something called a pad. Now what a pad is in musical composition is we often refer to them as footballs because they're kind of thin at one end, and then they get thick in the middle, and then they're thin at the other end. Sounds like, right? And they're long, lengthy things. And a pad can go over several measures. So you have the beat, you have the rhythm section, you put the pad over, and the pad is sort of tying everything together. And if you can go with me on this, you can kind of see how stories are shaping out. You put all that together into something called an ostinato. And an ostinato is a repeating phrase. So now we put those 3 elements together. We have an ostinato that keeps going. It echoes. It can change a little bit over time. But if you're a good composer, you're going to develop that ostinato. I'm not saying that you should repeat what you're doing in your story, but if you can echo elements of your story, revisit things, recycle things, and think about it in terms of little pieces, a beat, bigger pieces, rhythm section, and then an overlying piece, which would be the pad, and put that into an ostinato, you're starting to cook a pretty good you're starting to cook a pretty good song and also a pretty good story. But it goes even further than that. We have melody. So melody goes over the top of all this stuff. So the melody's like your main character, right? It's your voice. Is the voice harsh? Is it played on a shredding guitar or is it a piano? Think about the tone and think about the timbre of the voice that you're executing. And it might even help if you're writing in voice, because to me, as a musician, voice is all about singing. It's all about timbre. It's all about those things. So is it a violin talking in your story, man? Are you writing from the standpoint of a violin, or are you writing from the standpoint of a tuba? Like you're in the middle of an action scene, and the conductor, who is you, the author, points at the tuba player and says, "Do something." What's that tuba player gonna do, right? What's that violin player gonna do? Point at the violin player. It's your turn. You're up. Okay, we're moving to the sax player. So in your mind, what do you summon with those musical voices, with that melody over that ostinato that you've already established? And it is interesting. I have written with this in mind. I have actually used instrument voices to inspire, and you don't have to be a musician to do this. You know what a guitar sounds like, man. You know the difference between a shred and distorted guitar and a chunky guitar, and but a guitar says a lot of things, but it's still a guitar, right? So you know what it sounds like. So maybe as you're writing a scene, think to yourself, how would a guitar execute this scene? Try that.
Wow.
WriterDojo is Steve Diamond and Larry Correia. Produced by Jack Wilder and Bear and Hare Studios. Theme song, Word Mercenaries by Craig Nybo. New episodes come out every Wednesday wherever you stream your content. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can help support us by going to anchor.fm/WriterDojo, by leaving a 5-star rating and review, and by helping to spread the word. To advertise on the Writer Dojo, email ads@writerdojo.com. All questions and comments can be emailed to questions@writerdojo.com.
Ye lassie ne'er can do it, and it's
Shut your mouth.
because taxation is theft.
Because taxation is theft.
Keep going. People forget I'm kind of awesome.
Yeah.
And Steve's kind of a sociopath, so it's
No, I do it this other way.
we're rebels.
We hate rules. They suck.
Government audits.
They're big and stupid and dumb, and they all want to eat us.
That's the best thing I've seen today.